Today is a video of a Cobra 25, which is pretty basic. 25, as long as they're the LTD classics, LCD or classics. The XLRs seem to be different. Got an XLR here. It's an XLR Cobra 29, and that's a different board. So the variable that I'm going to talk about today is not for that radio. These are for the LTDs, the classics, the sound trackers. Those are all the same. But the XLR is different. It's an older radio from like the 70s, so it was a little bit before these. A lot of similarities, but a lot of difference. Enough where a variable like this won't work. Anyhow, I've had to do some other repairs on this radio to get it up and going. eBay find, and took a chance on it, which was okay. I'm okay with that. I got a deal on it. But what had happened is it was hooked up backwards, I do believe, because let's see if I can. Here we go. All right. Some of the things that can happen when you hook one of these things up backwards, as long as you didn't like, I don't know if this one here, it didn't damage anything. Thank goodness. When I first got the radio off eBay, I plugged it in and it was, you could tell it was shorted, and so I stopped. I said, all right. So pulled the lid off, and this cap right here was blown, and this diode, which in this particular model is diode 17 right here. It was shorted and split. Here it is right there. It's kind of hard to tell looking at it. Oh, get my camera in focus. It had a small split in it. I used an ohm meter to find that, because a diode usually has a small amount of resistance as it's letting electricity pass through it, or electrons pass through it. So you would see like a small amount of resistance, not quite like 0.500 ohms, which is as kind of why they use diodes in some things instead of resistors, to have a little bit of a weird effect, but it just can be good. Anyhow, this one here, obviously it goes to ground, so it had shorted and just became a resistor, a real low valued resistor, and that was causing the short. And due to it being hooked up backwards, it's easy to do if you don't pay attention. So aside of all that, in case you ever get one that's hooked up backwards, that cap, that blue, was this one right here. I changed it. And then that diode was diode 17 in the back over here. That one right there. Okay, well, we'll get started here. I'll be right back. Alrighty, here we are. We're back again, and this is going to consist of just some pretty simple components. I'm going to use the RF gain knob out of this radio. By the way, that diode was a 1N4004, which those diodes are good for 1,000 volts, but they're a small quarter amp diode, which is a handy thing because those will blow before it tends to mess anything else up sometimes. Anyhow, we're going to use the RF gain knob. That's how we're going to do this. And here's some simple stuff that we'll need. These you can buy these off of eBay or electrical supplier. It's a TIP29. That works really well for what I'm doing here. This is a 470 ohm polarized electrolytic capacitor. Polarized meaning it has a positive and negative leg. You can always identify components by the way that they you'll notice that this leg is shorter than the other. LED lights are the same way. Your shorter lead will indicate your negative on your LED lights. It'll on capacitors like these right here, the shortest leg is the negative, just for reference in case you don't know. Then what we're going to do, I'll get it all ready here, and I'll show you basically what it looks like. It's real simple. Let's see if we can flop this around. Oh, all right, so this is what it looks like. This is your TIP29 and your 470 ohm capacitor. You can use more capacitance, but at least 470 ohm. And I think that fits in there pretty well, considering it's going to go in a little bit of a tight space. And you want to try to make yourself on these. Let me just lay this out a little bit better for you. Negative side, note the position of the TIP, and the negative side of the capacitor. Positive in the middle of that TIP, and then this wire coming off will be my control wire. And I'll just solder these up real quick. And I prefer the capacitor on the front side of this TIP, and you'll see why here in a little bit. But you want to make sure that that capacitor is on the front side of that TIP. And you'll notice the back of it. See how the back is? So remember the position of this. Look closely. Negative on that side of the TIP. See my marking just for the heck of it. And positive in the middle, control wire on the very left. I won't go into emitter base collector because We don't need to get confused today. But that's what that's going to look like. Look very closely. Okay? And I'll show you what a finished product looks like real quick. I've already got one done up because I was working on this, and I said I need to do a video because there's a little bit of videos out here, but this is good stuff. Cobra 29, Cobra radios are everywhere, and everybody's running them. The variable key is important when it comes to having a good swing, good modulation, and if you want to do other things. Can't say right now, but if you want to run something where it doesn't key too much into it, and over-modulate or overdrive whatever you may have in front of it, whatever that might be, you want to be able to turn your dead key down but still have full forward swing. Well, this right here will provide that. It'll be reliable. You can do these without the TIP, but your voltage changes when you crank the vehicle up, so you'll constantly be adjusting your variable key to make sure that you have the right dead key for the forward swing that you need. This right here will provide you a steady regulated source. So no line voltage will change. This won't. This will keep your key at a very steady position. And I wrapped it in a little bit of heat shrink because it's going to go down right in here, into that, down in there, and it's going to go on jumper 6. That's what it's going to go on right there. And yeah, JP6. Kind of hard to see, but we're going to take that out. We'll get rid of JP6 and we'll put this in place of it. Now the position of this is really important as well. Just for the heck of it, you're going to position this thing. I'm sorry if the phone's flopping around, but I'll make sure I'll stop when I get ready to the point. This way, put the heat shrink on it. You don't want the back of this touching because that'll ground and short and blow your finals out. So you want to put a piece of heat shrink over that so that stays away from that, and it'll go right in place of JP6. And that's the same jumper on other radios. 25s have a little bit different number for that jumper, but it's like 36, I think. But it's the same one. It's in the same position. But before we put that in there, you're going to want to tie in a wire right here on the very front side of this RF choke. That's going to be very important because once you put this in here, it's going to be hard to get that. So go ahead and take you a piece of wire and make it long enough that'll go around, that'll kind of travel around and go to your RF gain pot. And you'll see here in a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of that there. I'm going to remove the RF gain pot. I've got to work on this PLL switch, so I'm going to take this front panel off anyways to make it a little easier. You don't have to do that. You can take a small thin-walled socket and take that screw out or bolt that holds this, and that pot will come out. But I've got to work on this PLL just a little bit, so I'm going to remove it, but just for the sake of it. Anyhow, so we'll be right back. All right, there. Okay, so we've got the knob removed. The RF gain knob. That's what we're using, is the RF gain knob. And you don't have to, you can use a separate knob. You can leave this alone and do something different and put a knob outside of the radio. If you make the wire come out the back and make an extensive length of wire so you mount your variable somewhere else, then you may want to use a shielded wire. But any wires that I run that are RF, I'll twist them together just to keep RF from jumping on them. A twisted pair of wires is what you want to do to keep RF from jumping on something. Telephone wires the same way. If you ever pull a new telephone wire out of the wall, new Cat 5, it's all twisted pair. But back to our thing here. So this is the RF gain knob, and what we're going to do is I'm just going to take these two wires that were on it, because that's all that was on it, was just two wires, and I'm going to twist them together and put a piece of heat shrink over it, and that'll just turn the RF gain up all the way. It'll just be full RF gain. You'll get full audio received. So let me do that right quick, and I'll be right back. Alright, so we've got our RF gain wires soldered together and heat shrinked. I'm just going to tuck them away just somewhere safe, so in case my heat shrink ever comes off, the wire can dangle in there, but hopefully it won't. Now, here's the deal now. What we're going to do is, this is a 100 ohm 1 watt resistor. That will go, if you'll look at the position of the variable resistor, there it is. That's the one out of the RF gain, the 1K pot. Now, when you do these connections, there's not a lot of room between these pots in the radio, like down in that little slot there where this goes. So you want to try to keep these really tight. This solder right here, don't let it build up too much. Don't leave the wire hanging off because there's not a lot of room. To stabilize this thing's going to be, it's a mobile radio, so it's going to get shook around. It's going to be put in my vehicle. It's going to get beat up. So that's not a lot of support. So I'm going to use some heat shrink, and I'm going to kind of fix this up a little bit where I get a little bit of strength out of the wire and the heat shrink holding it together. But notice the position of where I've got my 100 ohm 1 watt resistor right there. And this black wire will go to ground. Okay, I use the black wire because it's ground. We'll just call it that. And I'm going to go right to the head of the very first can, or not can, but shielded housing around this tuner. It goes straight to ground. This has a ground circuit on it. Takes that to ground. So you're going to take a little something, some emery cloth. I've got a little small Dremel tool. I'll just rough it a little bit, and solder will stick really well to that once you rough it up a little bit. And your black wire with your 100 ohm resistor is going to solder to that. Okay, so I'm going to do a little more work, and I'll show you here in a second. That's what it looks like. My heat shrink on it. That'll help hold everything steady. Okay, just like that. All right, camera. Focus on me here. Alright. So in order to... sucks. Come on now. There we go. We'll just do it like that. So I want to run this wire right up underneath that right there. And it looks like that. Sorry about my camera not focusing. Get in there. But I'll use these right here. These are my fan. These little things right here are good for a lot, but they're also good for actually really working. So these are my fingers. So I'll use these here to kind of loop that around and carefully loop it around so you don't break that RF choke. But you want to pull that wire around that thing once so it gives you a good connection. And you're going to solder that. And you don't need to hold your soldering iron there too long. You just want to make sure you get the solder on there. Not a cold joint, but you don't want to mess up the windings on that choke, because you soak too much heat. So typically a good hot soldering iron is good to have. 30 or 20 watt or something like that. I'm running this right here in case anybody wants to know. It's got a variable temperature setting, and I've got it at 379 degrees Celsius, which is pretty hot. That's getting on up there, but I don't have to hold it long. The solder goes to the point really fast, and so and it's not that I don't want to make it sound complicated, but you just want to go right there. And now I'm going to show you what that looks like here in a second. So it looks like that right there. Okay. I use a red wire so I can kind of keep up with what's going on. And that wire is good wire. Of course, to be honest with you, sometimes you can use a lot less than what people say you can, and it works fine. So let's not overcomplicate things. Just mostly get things connected well and be careful with that. Okay, so you can see what I've got here. And I added one more piece of heat shrink just because I don't want the back side of that. You don't want that right there, this back side, making contact with this heat sink that's on your finals. It's even shielded from the chassis. If you look closely, there's bolted to the chassis right there. There's a small piece of insulation that they use between this and this metal to keep this isolated from the chassis. So just to let you know about that. So of course this was just a little mock module I made. By the way, those little pieces of white and black you see are nothing more than just the insulation that I strip off of this wire right here, and it slips right over the ends of these so that it gives you sort of a little safety net. So you know, I doubt they'd ever make contact, but you know, if you can do something right, let's do it. So I did that. And my control wire went here. That was my thing. That's what this white wire is. That white wire is going to be your control wire. And our red wire is tied into the bottom of our choke, front side of it right there. Remember that, okay? So let me hook up the variable, the resistor, the pot. We'll get it in here, and then I'll solder her up, and it's almost done. Okay, so we've got our variable resistor, or pot, soldered in. And I put the wires on that side of it because there's just not a lot of room between these little pots right here. So if you try to put your wire right there, you may end up get close to these things. And so I want you to look really close at the position of this. This middle wire, which is our white wire, will be our control wire, which goes to the TIP. Of course, it was that right there. That white wire went on that, which is, as you can see, is on the middle of our variable resistor. And our red wire, which is the one that's going to that little bitty RF choke that I pointed out earlier, front side of it, is on that side of your variable regulator. And this black wire, like I said earlier, will go to the this shield around our IF transformer, which is a used for frequency, whatever. Anyways, you could tie to this chassis and get a ground as well, But I have this little feeling in the back of my mind, like, you know, this chassis actually shields this radio from whenever you're keying down, or if you get other radio frequencies that are strong nearby. It keeps, this chassis is designed to take that away from the board to keep from getting feedback. So if you go to the ground inside of here, I feel like you'll get a better filtered ground. You won't get a ground loop off the chassis. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to rough that can up a little bit, and I'm going to put some solder on it. Then I'm going to solder that black wire, which has our 100 ohm resistor on this side of the pot, our control wire in the middle, which is going to our TIP, and our red wire, which is going to our RF choke, which would be the output. This right here, I've got my hand is going to control that. So that's pretty much all you need to know. You just need to remember to make sure that you put your capacitor on the front side of that. Your negative goes to that side of the lead on the TIP 29. It's a 470 ohm capacitor. I use a 100 ohm 1 watt resistor in that position, and we'll just button her all up. It's really, really that simple. And you'll have a variable key that can key, you can turn it all the way down to nothing, half a watt, quarter watt, eighth of a watt. You can turn it full tilt and it'll swing fully. It'll get your full swing forward. Won't sacrifice any of that at all, but it'll reduce that dead key so you don't have a problem when you're overdriving something you may need to put in front of it, whatever that might be. So let's get her back together. Get that black wire soldered on that can right there, and rock and roll with it. Let's see what happens. So we've got her all together. It's working. Sure enough. Let's see. That's what it's gonna look like. I don't know if you can see in there or not, but there's, you can see where I've got them all soldered in. There's my black wire, or the 100 ohm resistor soldered to that can. There's everything there. Alright, let's see if I can do this here. I've got the radio keyed up. Watch, I'm going to turn the variable up. See that? Excuse my radio and my phone for not focusing. You can see that I'm adjusting that pot. Alright, let's watch this here. Audio. Let's see if I can get this thing to... I'll go all the way nothing. Audio. Oh, my big list. Audio. Audio. See, that's nothing. Watch this. Audio. See that right there? Look at that. I can go stock key. Audio. Let's cut it all the way back. Audio. You see that? Full swing and full control over your key. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much. Please like, subscribe, and share. And have a blessed rest of the week. God is in control. And stay awake. Don't go to sleep. We've got a lot of good things coming to us coming in the future. Thank you all. I'm out.